Can one prove that God exists? Actually, this was discussion in our classroom yesterday that led into the discussion of the 5 ways, arguments for God's existence. So that firebrand says no. It's actually what a lot of my students had said too. And I almost wish like I can just unpack it and be like, well, why do you think that? And so I'll just give you the example that they gave. They would say something like this. Well, you can't prove it. You can. Right, exactly. So just thinking about God, kind of like, oh, well, that seems to be something that's like subjective, right? This is the way that they were speaking. They were like, you can feel it. You can have an opinion, perhaps. You can have faith that God exists, but as far as like proving that, proving implies that you can demonstrate it to somebody else who doesn't believe it, and then they would believe it. And many people today would deny that you can prove God's existence in that way. However, I think this is mistaken. And Thomas Aquinas, actually, who's a philosopher from the 1200s, he thinks this is mistaken as well. So it all depends on what you mean by that little word prove. What do you mean by prove? Well, proof, like proof. Let me actually show you this. Can we prove that God exists? It depends on what you mean by prove, of course. We cannot prove God's existence in the way that one can prove a theorem of mathematics, like the Pythagorean theorem, as you see here, by pure logic from axioms that everyone accepts. Now, this is, as you know, you may remember the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. This is a demonstration of that. So they're actually quite clever. And you can find videos of this online. And it's interesting because you see this a square and this b square, and they're filled up with liquid in these demonstrations. And then it's kind of like on this turn wheel. And when it turns, a and b start at the bottom. And then when it turns so that c is on the bottom, and the liquid from a and b drip down into c, and they completely fill c without any spillage and no room left, because of course the volume, or really these are plain figures, but this is quite thin, but the volume of liquid here is equal. A and B are equal to C. That's a demonstration of that. Now, can you prove that God exists like that? No, of course not. But you wouldn't expect to prove those things either. So let me give you an example. So there are very few things. Prove does not always mean, it can mean sometimes, but it does not always mean 100% certainty. Certainty means 100%, like you cannot be in error about this. And in fact, there are very, very few things that you can actually ever be 100% certain about. One category would be mathematical truths. You can be 100% certain about those. You can be 100% certain about logical truths. Like you've probably seen this one before. If A is greater than B and B is greater than C, then that means that A is greater than C. Like, that's just a logical truth. It's demonstrable. You can demonstrate it. You can prove to people that that's the case. And sometimes you don't even have to prove it, because you can just understand that just by basic rational insight that that's the case. So, now, so to back up and to explain here, so I don't lose anybody, sorry about that. You cannot know for certain that God exists. However, that doesn't mean you can't know that God exists, okay? Because there are only a few things that you can know with certainty, like 100% certain, that you cannot possibly be in error about. That's okay though, because we can know things without having that high a bar of like 100% certainty. We can know things even lower. Like, for example, do you know where you parked your car? If you drive, right? If you have a car, do you know where you park it? Probably. I can know a lot of things. I can know where I parked my car. I can know that my wife loves me. I can know that I've got a degree in philosophy, like those sorts of things. I can know those things. I'm not 100% certain about them, because I can't be. And that's okay. That's just the world works, right? I'm not 100% certain I know where I parked my car, if I'm being really honest about that, because I could misremember. Somebody could have come and stolen it. Like if, do you know where your car is now? Yes, but are you 100% certain? No, you can't be. That's okay though, because all empirical matters, like things that you touch and feel and see, right? Things with your five senses, every empirical matter you cannot be certain about. Notice that the only categories of things that you can be certain about are mathematical truths, logical truths, and Descartes has this cogito ergo sum, this I think, therefore I am. You can be certain about that. But those three things, that's it. Like those are the things you can be 100% certain about. You cannot ever be in error about that. To take the last one, for example, this will be easy to see. Like if I'm thinking, I exist. Like that's just entailed by that. If thinking is happening, if I'm the thinker, then the thinker has to exist in order to do the thinking. So that's what he's saying there. I think, therefore I exist. So you can't be in error about that. That's self-evident. It's obvious. It's 100% certain. That's about it though. So I think people get confused about even what it means to know. My original question was, can one prove that God exists? And let's go back to that right here. Like I said, it all depends on what you mean by prove. If you mean prove, like this high a bar of 100% certainty, of course you can't do that. But you can prove if all you want to do is know, right? Like if you think of knowledge as a beaker, right? Like think of it as like if I had like an iPad here with like a PDF annotator or something with like an Apple Pen or something, I could draw with this. But so think of this as like a beaker, and I'm filling my beaker with liquid, and that liquid is evidence. So if I fill it to the top of the beaker, that would be 100% certainty. Like I could not possibly in error about that. But a little bit lower is where you need for just to know. Like the bar is not that high to know. It's going to be a little bit lower. And that's all I need, right? Because I can still prove to somebody, not with certainty, but I can still prove to someone where I parked my car. I just go out there and look at it. But I could still possibly be in error about that. Now back to this. Aquinas thought, to finish this thought real quick, and then we'll get to the chat. Aquinas argues that we can know by natural reason and not only by faith that there is a God. We can know this because you have to keep in mind what it means to know. And it's not going to be 100% certainty. And you can do that using one's own reason. It's not just I have faith. It's just my opinion. I just feel like it. It's not just like the subjective state or feeling or something. I can actually know with my reason and not just kind of feel a certain way.